Straight up, the author of He Who Fights with Monsters has managed to write one of the most unlikable protagonists to ever stain the page. And I mean that as a compliment. Look, let's just dive right into this one as I try with all my stamina not to compare this book to the only other lit RPG novel I know, the unquestionably awesome dungeon crawler Carl. It's hard not to compare others to your first true love, isn't it? But I think I can do this. Maybe. We'll see.
No fluff writing advice. Cut the fluff!
Full disclosure, I didn't understand the title of this book until I sat down to write the review and, surprising even myself, actually did some quick research. I was honestly confused because fighting and fighting with have two very different meanings. If you're fighting with your spouse, you're probably having a mild disagreement, but if you're fighting your spouse, well, that's when the cops get called. Turns out it's likely a reference to a Nietzsche quote. He who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. Makes sense, the quote fits the story. Now that we've established what an uncultured fool I am, let's discuss the good, the bad, and the monstrously ugly of he who has mild disagreements with monsters. First, the good. I'm still fairly new to lit RPG, but I love how humour seems to be a staple of the genre, at least in what I've seen so far, and this series continues the trend. I listened to the audiobook version, and while there's plenty of cringe humour that makes me want to throw my phone against a wall, there are also plenty of genuinely funny lines to balance it out. Yeah, it's not just the humour that borders on phone smashingly frustrating either. The entire book walks a fine line between riveting and unreadable. It's actually quite impressive, but let's talk more good. While the magic system itself isn't particularly groundbreaking, it is compelling, from how people gain and use magical abilities to the consequences of using certain spells to the aura system. Not sure if auras are typical in lit RPG. Either way, they add an interesting dynamic to the story. The leveling or ranking system is also interesting, especially once the power differences between ranks are put into context. It'll be interesting to see the protagonist, Jason R. Sana, move through the ranks. Even though I'm not so secretly hoping for his brutal and imminent demise, the guy is seriously hard to tolerate. He's like if gluten and lactose were a person. Jason's intolerable nature aside, I do appreciate the class choice made by the author, Shirtaloon, if that is his real name. The simple, predictable, boring route would have been to make him some flavour of wizard, and I don't want to spoil it, but the chosen class and the way Jason uses his powers is super creative. His fighting style is imaginative. If only the fights themselves. I almost said something negative, but we're not there yet. Let's keep it positive for now. Considering I ear read the audiobook version of He Who Fools Around with Monsters, the quality of the narration matters, and narrator Heath Miller pretty much nails it. As someone who couldn't narrate an audiobook to save his sausage, I'm always impressed with talented voice actors. I wasn't totally sold on some of the female voices, but what are you going to do? I assume Heath is a dude, so I can't really complain. Alright, it's time for the talk. The protagonist, Jason Asana, has a level of unlikability that rivals Holden Caulfield in The Catcher in the Rye. He rivals the most flawed and insufferable Dostoevsky characters. And I love it, for real. I respect that Shirtaloon had the balls to make his protagonist such a smug, self-important twat. It's a bold move. Jason's unlikability is particularly impressive because he is the typical hero character. He stands up for the downtrodden and tries to do the right thing most of the time, yet you still want him to get punched in the face at every turn. It's remarkable. The thing is, protagonists don't need to be likable. They just need to be interesting enough to justify following them around for an entire novel. So, while I see Jason's insufferable personality as a positive, I have major issues with his character overall, which I'll get to soon. Like an overdue bowel movement, I can't hold it in much longer. Alright, let's cover the bad before we move on to the undeniably ugly. Firstly, the tutorial style opening. I was bored shitless. That's right, I was so unenthused all the feces left my body. With that said, that's probably a me problem. I mean, the not being drawn in by the tedious opening thing, not the evacuating my bowels at the first sign of boredom thing. Actually, probably both. Anyway, I'm a notorious tutorial skipper, so forcing me to sit through a tutorial style opening was a little torturous. I almost rage quit the book, but I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because it got better before it got worse. A huge part of the story is basically Jason leveling up. While it is interesting to see his progression, leveling up literally becomes the entire plot for a while. Do you really want to read a story about someone working out? While the plot does die partway through, it eventually comes back to life to stagger along like a reanimated corpse. Another gripe: Jason becomes rich and powerful almost immediately. I mean, he arrives in a foreign world completely naked, with not even an eyebrow to his name, and he's just handed everything he needs by the universe, like some top tier manifester. He essentially starts his new life from a place of privilege. Maybe his luck gets explained in later books, but his constant good fortune makes it hard to take the character seriously. With that said, he does eventually start to earn his success, but it's less impressive when it seems like the universe is on his side and has rigged the game. It wouldn't have been such a major turnoff if it wasn't compounded by a certain ugly issue, which I'll get to soon. That's one big problem with He Who Fornicates with Monsters as a whole. Many of the issues enhance one another, making them bigger than they would have been alone. Look, let's just get into the ugly now. Here's where He Who Fiddles with Monsters gets monstrous. Overall, Jason is a terrible protagonist, and it's not due to his personality. The biggest issue is he's always the smartest person in the room or out of the room. He can't fail. He can't not outsmart someone, whether in a battle of wits or a battle of daggers. Essentially, it's not Jason's sense of superiority that makes him an underwhelming character, it's his actual superiority. His sharp intellect makes him a dull character. He succeeds at everything he does. It's as if fate won't let him fail. While it's great to build a character up like that to tear them down, Jason doesn't. I don't want to spoil it by saying too much about what doesn't happen. Let's just say, when the situation does go sideways, Jason isn't even involved. We're robbed of the chance to see him fail in a big way. And failure is where the biggest moments of character development should occur. Jason just dominates everything and everyone. Sure, there are some shaky moments, but they're usually over in a blink or a self satisfied wink, and there are never any real consequences. He's a male Mary Sue, untouchable, infallible, which almost makes He Who Fucks with Monsters unreadable. While there are some weak excuses for Jason's success in some areas, overall they don't add up. They don't explain Jason's seemingly guaranteed success in all things. Ultimately, watching someone constantly win isn't entertaining. The entire issue is magnified by the mediocre fight scenes. There's no tension, and some of them read more like battle reports than actual fight scenes. There's one in particular that had the potential to be a really tense moment. Finally, here we go. But almost the entire fight is just Jason calling out spells. Apparently, while all this is going on, his group mates are getting wrecked, but all that nonsense, the exciting parts, happen off page. I'm not saying there aren't moments of tension throughout the story, there are, but they generally involve characters other than our infallible protagonist. I mean, no wonder he's cocky, he can't fucking lose. Maybe there's an explanation later in the series for why Jason seems to be the smartest person in the world. I mean, it is a totally different world from his. Maybe people there are mentally impaired. The whole situation's like a semi intelligent adult going back to high school with all their life experiences. They'll just dominate everyone, even some of the teachers, which is what happens with Jason in He Who Falls in Love with Monsters. Even Sherlock Holmes gets bested on occasion. The fact that Jason is such a self satisfied douche canoe makes his inability to fail even more irritating. Hey, tell me he eventually falls flat on his punchable face, and I'll keep going with the series. Part of what makes unlikable characters work is their failures, their downfalls. No one wants to see a likable character dominate every scene, let alone someone as twattish as Jason Asana. Leave Jason alone! Alright, let's end on a positive note, because I didn't hate He Who Fights with Monsters. I enjoyed a lot of the ride. I mean, I stayed on until the end, and I may jump back on for book 2. It just didn't grab me by the balls the way Oh, I almost slipped. Well, would you look at that? I got through the whole review without mentioning Dungeon Crawler Carl. So let's end now before that changes. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy this video, hit subscribe anyway, and hate watch my content. That's always fun.